Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. It is Cleveland Stage Door. My name is Jimmy. That is Stacy. We have
Hello,
a
hello.
special guest today. Stacy, who are we talking to today?
We have the one and only, the wonderful Coleen Sexton. She is currently playing Heidi Hansen in Dear Evan Hansen, which is coming to the Connor Palace May 16th through the 21st as part of the Huntington Bank featured performance series. Colleen, welcome to Cleveland Stage Door.
Oh, it's so exciting. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, personally, I love Dear Evan Hansen as a show. I think that it brings up so many real and raw emotions and so many fabulous songs. And I know we're going to definitely talk about that, but can we start with just a little tidbit from your bio here? You starred in Broadway as Lucy in Jekyll and Hyde, correct?
I did.
Oh
Yeah, a
my
long time
gosh.
ago. Yeah,
What an
I
experience.
it was amazing. I was a diehard Linda Eder fan. I was listening to the Jekyll and Hyde soundtracks since I was like 14 years old, and just was such a fan of hers. And I actually had seen the show. I think I was 19. I had gone to see the show with my boyfriend at the time, and we waited. I had seen it like 3, 4 times, and I remember being at the stage door and meeting her and just being like, I'm such a fan. I didn't really know what to say to her, and she's like, "Oh, are you a singer too?" I was like, "I'm trying to be." I had just come home from doing a gig in Germany, and was kind of figuring out what I was going to be doing, at 19, because I didn't go to college. And 2 months later, I ended up getting an audition for Jekyll and Hyde to understudy Linda Eder. And I was like, yeah, right. Like, that's going to happen, because I was like, there's just no way. So I went in like not nervous at all and ended up, long story short, booking it. And then when they brought me back to meet the entire cast, couldn't have been sweeter company. They were just the best people ever. The last person they introduced me to was Linda. And she looked at me like, "You look really familiar. Did we just meet?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we met about 2 months ago. Hi, I'm your understudy." Kind of like it was just such a surreal moment. And she was so welcoming and so wonderful. And, that experience really taught me, and especially her, she taught me how to be. She was the most humble. You think of her as this star and she is, and she's amazing, but she's also the most humble, generous, kind. She's so good to her fans. And I learned from her to it's all about the cast, and it was just an amazing experience. And then about a year and a half later, I was understudying Linda and Christiane Knoll, and then the 5 women in the show. So I was a swing. So I covered 7 tracks.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then about a year and a half later, I took over after Luba Mason played Lucy, and got to play it for the year till it closed, which was amazing, because then David Hasselhoff came in at the end, and he wanted to make a recording of it.
Yeah.
So I just happened to be playing Lucy while he made the recording, and it's just kind of cool that I have that recording now forever. It's really neat.
Well, I can say, like, as a fan, I have watched your recording of Jekyll and Hyde so many times.
Thank you.
I was so excited to hear that you were coming on our show, because I am a legitimate fan of your work.
I appreciate that.
I'll stop fangirling over you and get back to the interview. But I really am. If for those of you out there that are listening and watching this, if you have not watched that, I suggest that you do. It's just a wonderful representation of that show. But you went from that show and working with David Hasselhoff and recording. I see you were also in Wicked and Legally Blonde and Chicago, and just so many giant hard-hitting musicals. What has been your favorite one to be a part of, with Dear Evan Hansen excluded, of course, because I'm sure that that's the
I was
answer.
gonna say that's probably up there. Heidi Hansen. I mean, it's a dream role. I'm so blessed and honored to be playing this part. It's touching lives, and it's I have to say, obviously Elphaba was I stood by for a year, but I went on a lot, and that role is just one of the most exciting roles I've ever gotten to play. But I have to say, Lucy in Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, it's my first It's my only actual like on Broadway show. I haven't been on the actual Broadway stage since then. All the like, so Chicago, Wicked, Legally Blonde, they were all the first national tours. So and Legally Blonde was awesome too. You know, I wish I could be in shape like that now. Oh my goodness, you know, I had to stay fit with that jump rope. You know, I've been pretty blessed. And Chicago was great too, because, you know, growing up, I started in dance. You know, I started dance class late. My mom got me started late because I tried everything else before dance. I tried flute, I tried soccer. I wasn't good at any of it.
Yeah.
And finally, you know, at 8 years old, she's like, "What about dance class?" And so I started in dance. One of my first shows I ever got was that I landed was Paper Mill Playhouse. When I was 15, I got Singing in the Rain.
Oh.
And so I was in the ensemble dancing, and so when I ended up getting Chicago, I think it was like 2004. I remember thinking to myself, wow, like, okay, like I still can dance. I was a little bit klutzy in the show, and I was like, really? I just booked Chicago? And but it was really an amazing experience to be around such talented, phenomenal dancers and learn from them, and just to try something different than, you know, the singing, because I consider myself now, you know, a singer actress. And but yeah, you know, to go back to what your original question was, as I have to say Lucy, because it was my first big show, and those songs, and just the cast. It was such, and I still to this day I have people, a couple members of the company, that when I started, I was so young that they came up with the name Little Chicken. And to this day, they still call me Little Chicken. And
I love that.
Even though I'm not really a spring chicken anymore, you know, it's just kind of cute that they still consider me. They could still call me Chicken, not Colleen.
Right. I know there are so many people that start so early. I think it's hilarious that you said you started late at 8 years old.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, that is kind of the expectation of the theater, is that you've got kids that are like, oh, I've been on Broadway 17 times and they're not even 10 years old yet.
Yeah.
And then people like yourself, who I still think 8 is funny to say that it's late, but who start a little bit later.
I just meant like 8 in just dance class. I just started in dance class when I was 8. So,
oh,
like,
so
when
did you start in the theater?
3 and 4, and so like I started. What I consider for a kid to start in dance class late in it as 8. You know what I mean? But because I tried so many other things before dance, you know, and I did not succeed.
So I want to talk a little bit about Dear Evan Hansen specifically, because of course Heidi Hansen is it's such a meaty role, and there's so much to sink your teeth into. How do you approach something like that has such a distinct bond between a mother and her son, and all of your feelings, all of his feelings? I mean, it's really, it's huge.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, when you look at the show in general, it's such a real, like, I mean, quote unquote, real show. There's so many people in the audience that can relate to every single one of these characters. Heidi, you know, is the single mom who is just trying to relate to her son. And it's, you know, it took a lot for me because, you know, I started out in the show as an understudy for both of the moms. And I was with that for a while. And then it was in June of last year that I ended up moving up to the part. And when I got to rehearse with Michael Greif, who's, you know, brilliant, our brilliant director, you know, he finds these little things and these ways to get things out of you that it's just so well written. And there's not, you just have to like take on the script and really just read the word. Like it's so well written, and the ellipses and the words and the ums, and it just comes so naturally. But I you know, working with Anthony has been wonderful as my son. And, you know, I get to work with a bunch of the different Evans too, when they go on, and they all have their different takes. It's just, you know, as an actress, you just want to listen and really respond to these amazing, you know, perfectly written show. But yeah, it's, you know, and then the songs, I mean, you can't beat this music. It's you know, an amazing score. The song at the end where she, you know, really relates and talks to her son about, you know, how I'm always going to be here no matter what. It's a pretty emotional song. And I remember when I first started, I'm like, how am I going to get through this? Like when I first started singing it, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to sing this song because it's so
I don't think I could
emotional.
do it without crying my face off. Because in
Yeah,
the
it's
audience, I've got
oh,
tears rolling down. I can only imagine what it's like to be on
yeah.
stage doing that in front of a whole theater full of people. How do you keep the emotion out and also in? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I do. It's funny there, you know, you do have nights where sometimes the emotion, like the emotion's always there, but sometimes it's really there and I have to like, you know, I'm either like sobbing or, you know, it's it you and you hear the audience too. You know, it's definitely a touching moment in the show, period. It's hard not for the audience to get emotional. Um, but it's yeah, it's a tough one. I struggled for quite some time when I first started with the show to get through the song without like, because you know, you have to be able to sing it too,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
But it's so such a it's so, again, a brilliantly written song, and the lyrics are so simple and beautiful and meaningful. And yeah, this show is just it's really been an amazing experience, like my journey with the show and then this role. And I couldn't be more grateful to be a part of it. It's been, you know, and we're almost going to be done. It's going to be a very emotional day that day. We're coming to it. We're coming to an end with the tour, and it's going to be. I've been with it since the beginning, so
Wow.
it's going to be an emotional moment. That's for
Oh,
sure.
that's one of those moments that like you can't think about it.
No, nope, nope, not yet. We still
Not
got
yet.
time.
So I know that obviously is one of the more poignant scenes in the show, but what are some of your favorite memories of the show? Because one of my favorite things, now I've never been at a cast of this caliber. I've been at like community theaters, and I know
Yeah.
you get a bunch of people backstage peeking through the curtain to watch whatever that scene is that everybody loves. When you're not on stage, what's that scene that you're peeking through the curtains watching your co-stars?
Well, one of my favorites. The thing about Dear Evan Hansen is obviously it's a very dramatic, emotional show that, you know, tears at your heartstrings. But I love the comic relief. I love Jared. I love Sincerely Me. I actually sometimes when I'm backstage do a little tap routine to it. I'll make up little tap steps because I was a tapper in my day. But I love Sincerely Me. It's just so fun and uplifting, and you need that comic relief in the show, or it's just going to be too sad. So definitely that's probably my. But also I don't come out on stage until at the end of Act One. The song you excuse me, you will be found is, you know, that song is just so touching, and I don't come on until the very very end, so like it's one of my favorites. It just has the meaning in it. There's a lyric in the show, "You are not alone," and it's repeated constantly, and it's just such an amazing message for everyone, for kids of today, for parents of, you know, like this show. I really believe that, you know, every family that has teenage children, families with kids, should come see it. I remember the other night I was standing on stage and there was a father with his eyes just welling at the end, like when we were bowing, and his arm was like holding on to his son. So I can like talk about him and get emotional. His arm was like on, like holding his son so tightly. And it was just, and to just know, I know I'm getting off on different tangents here of different,
No,
but
please.
it was such a touching moment to see that, and to be able to touch families like that. You know, it's wow. I really didn't expect to get this emotional talking about it.
Well, it's
It,
such
it,
a moving moment,
yeah,
really.
yeah,
The whole from start to finish in this show, you know, it's the lie that should have never been a lie. You
yeah,
know, it was the letter that should never have been read by anybody. It was the beginning of the show. It's like the cat's out of the bag, and now what? And
yeah.
I
It's
think
just snowballs out of control, and then the connection he wants with the family that he's not getting from his mom, and how the lot, you know, and then him not telling his mom anything, and then you know, it's really a show about connection. you know, and communicating and knowing that you to be able to talk things out and not just be on social media all the time, because social media is great for certain things and it's bad for others. You know, we have that balance of, but definitely communicating and connection is what I think the heart of Dear Evan Hansen is.
Absolutely. Now, with that being said, I know one of the favorite things is the connection that happens on stage that is so wonderfully well written, but also the connection that happens backstage, from the crew to the cast to you know, the people who are dressing you in the wings, to making sure that your hair looks perfect, to the guys in the light booth, to everything. What is one of those backstage connection moments that is happening? I could tell you've got a story right up.
So I'm very, very close with our wig person, our stylist, and she's one of my very dear friends. And after So Big, So Small, which is always you know, you come off that and you're crying, and it's a very, you know, sometimes I'm even, as I said before, more emotional than other nights. And, you know, if something triggers, like some personal thing I can connect to with that. So I'll come off stage anyway, and I'll go to the dressing room to change for the last scene. And she has a dirty joke for me every time. Like, and they're always really good. So it always gets me into that, you know, get me out of my emotional state, and, like, you know, makes me laugh. And yeah, and you know, we have an amazing crew. I mean, you can't beat our crew. So just to communicate with all them backstage, and I'm trying to think of what other, you know, we're just all pretty tight. It's a great, very talented, very kind group of people that I get to work with every day.
So what would you say? I'm gonna bring my funniness here now.
Okay.
What would you say is like the most embarrassing part, like most embarrassing thing that happened to you so far on tour? Like, has anything like stood out? Has
Oh
anything,
yeah,
like,
I have one.
happened
I
to
have a
you?
story. So when I was doing, oh my gosh, when I was doing Cynthia one day, I was when I was the understudy, I went on for Cynthia, and there's a scene at the end of Act 1 where she's giving Connor's tie to Evan for his speech that he doesn't know he's about to do at the end of Act 1. And it is one of the most tender, emotional moments. And I walk on stage and I wear these little Tory Burch flats. And as I'm walking out I come off and I put the sweater on and I run onto the disc that's going to move onto the stage. It's kind of a quick little change. Well, I lost my shoe and I have a bare foot underneath it. So I remember going to the disc, one of our stage managers throwing the shoe onto the disc, so it's just sitting on the disc. And Stephen Christopher Anthony was playing Evan at the time. And I didn't have time to lean down and put it on. So I'm literally standing there, and he looks down, and we almost lost it. Like, we can't cry. We can't laugh right now. This is not a place where we can laugh. So I just stood there with one bare foot, and then did the whole scene, and I kept my stuff together. And then my last line is, think about it, as I hand him the tie, and I just supposedly walk off stage, and I said, think about it, sat on the bed, put my shoe on, and walked off. You had to be there. And then you had everybody in the wings just dying laughing because I got the shoe and I put it. It was kind of a mess, but very funny.
Live theater. You never know what's going to happen.
The beauty of live theater. I mean, and there's also moments where, you know, you kind of go up, it's funny, you do the lines every night, right? Mm-hmm. And there's sometimes that you just blank and you have to kind of improvise and, but it doesn't happen often, but when it does, it can be kind of funny. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So with all of the touring, all of the traveling, all of the shows that you've done, I'm sure you've been to Cleveland before, right?
Yes, we actually came to Cleveland with this tour. And I'm trying to think, I don't think before that I came through Cleveland. It's so hard to remember. I think that was my first time. And it's shocking because, you know, my father, who passed away when I was very young, was born in Cleveland. Yeah. So I kind of feel like I have a kind of a connection to Cleveland. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and because of my dad being such a diehard Browns fan, I am a Browns fan.
Oh,
So
of course,
I,
as you
you know,
There you
should be.
go.
As you should be.
I root for the Browns big time. So, and my brother Joe also is he's followed my dad's footsteps, and he's a huge fan. What was that, a couple years ago, we came so close to getting into the Super Bowl. I was like, no.
I don't know if it's ever going to happen for us.
Yes, it will. Yes, it will.
It will.
Well, have faith, Stacy.
It's fun to think about, but so aside from like catching a Browns game, is there anything that you are every time I'm in Cleveland, I have to do this. I have to eat here. I have to go there.
So here's what's interesting. I'm going to have you give me suggestions, because the last time I was in Cleveland, that was when I decided to start the Whole30 diet. And I don't know why, but I had to cook all my meals. So I really didn't get to really experience Cleveland, which I'm going to do when I go there next. And I need all the recommendations, because, when you do the Whole30, it's very specific and so I literally had a kitchen and I cooked. We were there for 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And,
I got you. Don't worry.
I want all the suggestions, because I'm going to go to every restaurant, since I didn't get to go to any last time.
After this, I'll send you a list. Don't you worry.
Can't wait. I can't wait. I'm going to enjoy every restaurant you mentioned.
Barrio is definitely the top of that list.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is it called?
Barrio? Yeah,
Barrio.
It's a Mexican restaurant. It's
Great.
right down the street from Counter Palace. It's so good.
Oh, I love it. Awesome.
So you were here in 2018 for 3 weeks. Now you're here for 5 days.
No,
this
I
time
know.
around. So
a lot of these we have a bunch of, till we finish, we have a lot of 1 weekers, which can get tough, because you're traveling on your day off. Like when we were there for 3 weeks, we'd have our Mondays off and just kind of be able to relax and then go back to work Tuesday. So when you're traveling Monday, it's kind of like you don't have much of a day off, which can be tiring, but you get used to it, I guess.
How do you prepare yourself for 8 shows back to back like that? Like that's
rest.
pretty crazy.
I'm a big, I like my sleep, and I like lots of water. When you change, that's the other thing about touring is it gets tough, is the different climates, right? So you're going from one place that's really dry to humidity back to dryness, and it's like you have to constantly hydrate. And I tend to you don't want to isolate yourself when you're on the road, because that's not a good thing. But I try to not hang out a lot during the day with people, because I don't want to, I need to save my voice. Mm-hmm. So, every now and then I'll have coffee with certain people, but a lot of the times I like to just kind of be quiet, so I can save to be able to do the 8 shows a week, right? Because there's a lot of, one of the things I had to balance when I first started playing Heidi 8 shows a week was there's a lot of yelling in the show. There's a lot of fights, and I had to be careful to not blow my voice out, so I was able to sing. So it got into my system finally, but it was a tough balance. It was hard to find that balance of learning how to scream without screaming from here and using your diaphragm, and so you're able to keep it up for the whole week.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm very much looking forward to sitting in the audience and seeing you live and in person. And
I'm so excited. When are you coming? Do you know when you're going to be there yet? Or
I think we're coming opening night.
Yay!
So
yeah,
May 16th is usually when they bring the media out for that night.
Awesome.
So it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great.
I will be there multiple times, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Yeah, I have to say, on all of the shows that have come through, we've had a really, really great batch of shows this year come through, and I was the most excited for Dear Evan Hansen. Don't tell anyone else that I interviewed that; they'll be so mad at me. But I was the most excited for Dear Evan Hansen. So I'm very excited to get to see you and get to see your wonderful cast and the performance that you guys put on. Again, for anybody that's out there listening, it is at the Counter Palace from May 16th to the 21st as part of the Huntington Baked featured performance line. Coleen, as we're kind of wrapping up here, I just have to ask, if there was one part that you could get cast in that is something you would absolutely never be cast as, what would that be?
Oh, no, I was going to say I have a couple that I would like to be cast in, but to never be cast in.
Yeah, because like I'm never gonna be cast as Audrey in Little Shop. Like
That's
it's just
what I want to do.
Yeah.
So funny. I was just gonna, and you're like, oh, that's the role I want to do, Audrey in Little Shop.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good
it.
question. Oh, I have to think about that one. I haven't. That's a really good question. Probably anything with a really high soprano. Probably Maria in Sound of Music, maybe, or I mean, I do have some soprano stuff, but I'm more of a mezzo soprano. Oh my goodness.
That is a great question.
I mean, and also, okay, I'm too old now, but I would have loved to have played Gypsy Rose Lee at one point. That's a role.
Oh, no, that's a great one.
Because I think I'm a little too.
Well, I feel like maybe another few years down the road, you might be Mama Rose. That's really,
so that point. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, a few years from now, definitely. Yeah. But you might get there, and with your voice, you'd probably crush that role. So
thank you. You're very kind.
So one wrap up question for me is, I ask every single person that tours through Cleveland this, what is the one piece of advice you give to new people touring? Like, what is the one thing that you would suggest to a new you of, like, some I get, like, pack light, some I get don't overpack is the biggest one, but what is the one piece of advice you give?
Oh, you mean so people that are going on tour?
Correct.
Yeah, bring out your favorite so we travel with our 2 suitcases, but we also have on the trucks a trunk. So I have my because I'll go to like Airbnbs because I like kitchens, right? So like bring your frying pans, stuff that you can keep into your trunk, your yoga mat, there's lots of like little things that you can bring that you can't have in your suitcase that you can have in your trunk that the company travels for you. So all the things that you think that you can't bring, you can, and you can keep them, in the trunk, your coffee maker or your yoga mat. Like I think I already said yoga mat, but, and I would also say, just, it can get you can get homesick. I remember I'm so used to it now because I've been doing it for so long, but I remember the first couple of times I was out, I got a little homesick, just to keep in touch. And, it's good now that you have FaceTime and you're able to communicate with people and see them. And it's a lot different than when I started, when you could do and you didn't have that. And also to just take care of yourself, to get a lot of sleep. Touring's hard. It's, like I was saying before, the climate's changes can always mess up your voice, and you just got to really get a lot of rest and, just take care of yourself.
That's great advice. And speaking of climate change, yesterday was 40 degrees. Today is 70.
Wow! See,
that's how our climate is right now. Luckily, you're coming in May, so
I know
it should be pretty steady by then. We'll just have a lot of allergies, a lot of pollen by that point.
Yeah.
But so anyway,
I'm looking forward to it. So.
It's gonna be great. Coleen, thank you so much for joining us once again. You can see Coleen on Dear Evan Hansen at Connor Palace Theater on Playhouse Square, May 16th through the 21st. Tickets are on sale now at playhousesquare.org or calling 216-241-6000. And I was told this morning there's very little left. So I know Cleveland loves Dear Evan Hansen, and it's going to be such a great show. Coleen, thank you so much for joining us. This was a great conversation, and we hope to see you. It's going to be about a month from now. We'll see you in Cleveland, and go Browns.
Go Browns. Woo-hoo. I know the other thing is I looked up, I mean, I am a Yankee fan. However, when they're not playing, I root for the now Guardians. Yeah. And I was looking up, I was like, oh, maybe there's a game. And that whole week they're away that we're there. And I was like, oh, I think they come back the next Tuesday. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So
always happens. Yeah. Always happens.
Well, next time you're here, we'll get you tickets.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the Cavs are still in the playoffs by the time that happens. So then go from there. So Coleen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
This is the Cleveland Stage Door. We'll see you guys all next week. Remember to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. We'll see you all next week. Peace out.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you very much.